People who pursue their dream and failed. What is your story and do you regret it? My husband and I started an auto body shop about 8 years ago. Things were going well for the first 4-5 years, gradually increasing profits year after year. Then he decided he wanted to get a bigger shop, which is understandable. A dream shop became available and we decided to take it. The overhead was about 5x what the other shop was. We ended up struggling to make ends meet. People were angry because their vehicles were taking longer to do, because we had to take more vehicles on to try and pay the bills every month. It basically became this downward spiral that we were running out of money, not making anything and not being able to pay all of our overhead each month. We were taking on bulls projects just to try and cover our asses. Ended up taking on stuff that wasn't paying what it was worth, but it was better than no money coming in at all. What was the nail in the coffin was that one of our so-called friends purposely vandalized his own car so he could have it restored through an insurance claim. Ended up wanting a ton of work done above and beyond what the insurance would cover. We told him that the price would end up going up because of the additional work. He ended up pulling the car, trying to sue us, and we had to spend over $4,000 in lawyer fees, as well as settling with this so-called friend for another $2,000, just to avoid another couple of $1,000s in lawyer fees. It was one of the last straws and that was about 6 months ago. At this point we are trying to tie up financials, sell some equipment, and move on with our lives without having to sell our home to pay debts that we incurred through the business. It's been a tough struggle and it sucks to see 8 years of your life going down the drain slowly, but it was just a couple bad business choices that we couldn't recover from. Went to a video game design college because I wanted to make video games. Quickly became apparent that the industry is extremely cutthroat and there is no such thing as job security or work-life balance. I quit after a year, still paying off the student loan 6 years later. In 2009, I got laid off by the company I had spent the past 4 years working for, but instead of just getting laid off, I started my own design company and asked them to put me on a small retainer so they could keep my services at a discount, and I could keep on paying rent and eating ramen noodles. So, I started the company, got incorporated as an LLC through LegalZoom, and started to do the work and look for new clients. However, as I said, this was 2009. The economy was in the tank and people weren't really looking for brand enhancements, clever 3D mail campaigns, or cute animations. So I struggled. I also got married a couple of months after starting the business and failed to meet some commitments to the clients I had found while away for the wedding honeymoon, and I returned to find some very pissed-off clients and, rightfully, unpaid invoices. I never really got out of that tailspin. I got depressed. I got really withdrawn. My wife and I were in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment where I also worked out of our bedroom and her desk was under the stairs. She was working on her masters. I was pretty miserable. She was miserable. I couldn't find any more work. My retainer ran out with my old company. I couldn't afford to keep the portions of my income that I needed to reserve for taxes, and I dipped into those when things got tight. Then I decided to start looking for a job. I needed a change. So I applied to 8 jobs a day for 3 weeks, eventually applying to 120 plus jobs. I applied all over the country, and I got like 8 callbacks. A few of those happened to be in my hometown in TX. So I planned a trip to see my family. Ended up getting a great job there that finally broke me out of my depression. I moved to TX while my wife was finishing her last semester of her masters. After I left, she thrived. She made new friends. She became a much happier person, in general, and I realized that I'd been dragging her down. And to be fair, vice versa as well. She ended up taking a job in the same place where she got her masters and I stayed in Houston and we decided to get divorced. That was probably the lowest point of my life thus far. The IRS caught up to me the next April and I owed several $1,000s in back taxes for not paying my contractor taxes to them. But luckily, I had a great job, was able to take a loan out from family, and paid them back fully within the year. It all worked out in the end. I'm remarried to a wonderful woman, have a great job doing something I like with people I really like. Just don't start a company in the middle of a recession. And if you're working from home, don't do it in a 1-bedroom apartment when your soul also spends a lot of time at home. Whoa, interesting story, man. Nice knowing that throughout all the bad parts, things can still come out completely fine on the other end. Happy for you. I spent a huge chunk of my life touring in bands, hoping to develop a career in music, knowing it would take years, if ever, to actually make money at it. I've put myself in a lot of debt, headaches, lack of sleep, and stress to the point where I've had to seek medication at times to deal with everything. I failed in a way that I'm at an age and place in life where the window to develop a career I can even live on through my adult years has all but completely closed. I don't regret it, as I've gotten to travel to a lot of awesome places over the years, make a lot of friends, create amazing experiences, and I'm still giving it another year or two thanks in part to getting a gig in a band that's considered a legendary hardcore punk metal band, and heading off to do my first tour in Europe starting next month, and some opportunities further east of that continent later in the year. Most people will say that I didn't fail at my dreams, but I'm fully aware that this party is pretty much over after this year, and with that means that I didn't achieve the career I had set off to ultimately have. I wanted to travel, live abroad, no boring life for me, study Japanese, got a job teaching English in Japan out of college, and I hated it, so I gave up and work a boring job in my hometown. My degree is useless for everything. I'm living in a post-dream world and I can't really envision a future for myself anymore. My dream was to be an English professor. I loved literature, I loved the academic lifestyle, and it just felt natural after I did so well in both undergrad and grad school. After I got my master's degree, I spent 2 years trying to get into a good PhD program, but I couldn't get in anywhere. I was crushed. I spent 2 years after that in a crappy job, which made me feel even worse about the whole thing. I've since gotten a much better job. I haven't regretted not continuing my academic career ever since I found out how nice it is to have money. The prospect of spending 4+ years being poor to maybe get a tenured position with a starting salary around what I make now has lost its appeal. I'm proud of the work I did on my master's thesis, and I learned a ton, but I can continue to learn about literature without uprooting my life. I wanted to play professional basketball overseas. Not your typical I grew up playing ball. I mean I was a crazy kid from 12-21. Days start at 4:30 am. Hours in the gym and weights every day for years. I lost friends over it just putting all my free time into training. I just wanted it really badly. I made it to the college level and blew out my knee my sophomore year. After that I just lost the motivation. Felt like I lost a step coming off of surgery and decided to move on and just focus on school. I don't regret it at all, and in fact I learned a lot about the journey and the satisfaction reward of hard work and dedication. You also don't lose the experience gained even if you came up short. I don't think I'd ever regret pursuing a dream, one without financial investment. I love chasing dreams. It keeps your mind occupied and gives you a purpose. I'm totally aware of the possibility of coming up short, but I feel failure is not trying. Living with the wonder that if you did try, that's what would drive me crazy. During the time of recovering from surgery, luckily I found my new passion, software development. I want to start a company, apps, and that's where all my time goes now. I've got a couple apps in development right now that I'm really excited about, but not afraid for them to fail. Experience gained in the process is going to pay off regardless. TLDR. You won't regret trying. You'll regret not trying. I was trained to be a ballerina since I was 3 and it was all I wanted. I had almost hit the 10-year mark when I started middle school. I was at the studio every day, taking Pilates and arting and hanging around as an understudy competing for even small dancing parts. What happened was I was almost 13 and I was starting junior high. I had to make the choice between ballet and being a teenager. This was around the time my weight was being monitored and I was getting into bulimia. That's something the Lifetime channel doesn't exaggerate. I gave it up because I just couldn't take the heat. I know, pathetic. But, like I said, I was 13. I was starting to fill out and lose that stick-thin ballerina shape. I was becoming more interested in having friends and being a snot-nosed little punk. The commitment was huge. The thing that really made up my mind was this: ballerinas are the worst. stereotypically stuck up and prissy. The real prima ballerinas at the studio could be straight up inhuman. I once read that it's because their rigorous training leaves them little time to develop social skills and empathy. The amount of backbiting and sabotage that went on, like loosening costume straps and throwing toe shows in the dumpster. Let's just say it was an awkward 13-year-old's nightmare. I signed up for marching band and thus ended that chapter of my life. I try not to regret the decision too much, seeing as my weight is healthy and I'm not a sociopath. Created a throwaway just for this, hoping it will be cathartic. Growing up everything was really promising. Top of my HS in grades, got scholarships to colleges for athletics, decided I wanted to be a military officer and took a free ride to college on an ROTC scholarship. A year in I suffered a debilitating sports injury, as in couldn't walk, and left ROTC with my dream of being in the infantry over. Took out loans and went back to school. Graduated and started a small carpentry general contractor company with my friend, which went belly up in 2005 to 2006 as the housing bubble began to burst. So I took out more loans and went to law school. Halfway through I suffered my 5th concussion playing amateur rugby. The first 4 were all in middle school through high school playing football and hockey, and had a major personality swing. The trauma from repeated head injuries left me a totally different person. Someone I didn't even recognize. Almost failed out of law school, but someone noticed my problem, got the medical attention I needed, pulled my crap together and graduated with good grades. Right at the height of the subprime mortgage debacle and economic collapse. Spent the next few years bouncing from crap law firm to crap law firm, until I landed a decent job. 3 years later, my boss had a mental breakdown and was disbarred. Firm went out of business and I was without a job. About this time, my fiancé of 6 years and I split, jobless, penniless, partnerless, and $215,000 in debt. Student loans. I moved into a tiny apartment with 3 other guys and decided to get back into MMA as an amateur to release some stress. First fight, my face was shattered and had a total orbital blowout. Now I'm in my mid-30s, in debt up to my butt, with a drinking problem, a wonky eye, bad back, and working as a cashier at the local supermarket just so I have insurance to pay for my concussion treatments. So yeah, I basically failed at every dream I ever had. But I'm still chugging along, and have been applying to every legal job I possibly can. This can't last forever, and only I have the power to change it. So I have that going for me, and yes, I regret almost every decision I ever made along the way. All I wanted was a better life than I had growing up, and basically it has left me broken physically, mentally and emotionally. Cheering for you, man. I spent my undergrad so certain I was going to be a writer. I really wanted to be a fiction writer. It was plan A, B, and C. I got my degree in teaching because I thought I'd have more time to write. After my degree, I managed with some minor writing gigs but they weren't constant. I was even living in a huge city at the time. Went nowhere. I did some work for a school district while I mulled over getting my licensure. But at that point every other teacher was getting fired in my state. I ended up getting a marketing writing job. It didn't last long but it was a little bit validating. The company didn't have enough business for me to stay. I still wrote like nobody's business and tried finding a new way into writing, but it never went anywhere. I got one short story published, a remote internship in publishing that fizzled out. So I went back to school, but my school only had early childhood education so I figured it wouldn't be that hard to make up the difference in early childhood so I can apply for my teaching licensure. This was my plan X, but at least it was an option. I liked the little kids I used to tutor. Turns out I hated it. Spending 5 years away really opened my eyes to how they teach pedagogy. It's a lot of talking about the inherent, systemic problems in education with no real solution. Education trends you're not supposed to deviate from. And during my observation, I didn't envy the preschool teacher. It filled me with dread. So the next semester, I decided to take a class for fun. Took geology. OMG. It turns out that this is so much fun. It's so hands-on. and the investigative nature of science really appealed to me. Now I'm planning for the next steps for my second BA. I'm still writing, but once I fell in love with geology, it was so easy to let that writing for pay dream go. Now I just write fiction because it's fun and it shows on the page. Way better, more relaxed. The sucky part about this whole thing is now my family only sees me as a writer and keep trying to get to write for pay on sites and stuff. I get the hesitated "that's great" remark when they ask about geology. They'll get used to it. This is a really long way of saying that even though you set out for one thing, that journey can be more important than you realize. I wouldn't get a BA in geology. You're looking for a BSc if you're interested in actually getting a job. The only dream I've ever had was not to struggle financially. My family has always been really poor. I fought my way out of poverty, worked my butt off and reached a milestone $50K plus it, and bought a house. I got fired earlier this month and have been looking for work, but all I can find here in the Midwest is $13 HR jobs. That's a far cry from the $24 HR I was making before. I feel like such a failure, like I should have known my life wouldn't amount to much. It sucks, but I think there's hope. We shall see what March has in store for us. So far 2016 sucks. This will be buried. Still, just want to say thank you to everyone who has shared their story. It seems split between regret and non-regret for varying reasons. I want to reply to all of you, but in case I don't, know this: there is a reason you pursued your dreams in the first place. It allowed resolve to the grand question we all should strive to answer: what if? Those that regret knowing that answer, I call bulls. Otherwise you would have been too scared to pursue your dream in the first place. It would have eaten at you far worse than the setbacks it has led. Be proud that you had the balls to do what so many are too scared to do. I wanted to make movies that change the world. I was enrolled in a world-renowned academy but was 3 weeks out from infections and surgeries for breast cancer. I was on heavy duty, Oxycontin, pain relief, and couldn't make the pace work for my family. I withdrew. I am taking a very alternate route to making moving pictures, and missed many fabulous opportunities, yet again because of my treacherous body. But it's okay. I can't regret meeting some of the world's most talented actors or some really wonderful friends. Do I truly regret it? I regret the timing of it and the failing to finish part, but it just means there was a different path waiting for me. Really wanted to have a career in radio, but I was born a little too late. There have been periods where I made a living off it, but between changes in the industry and bad luck on my part, I never became that well-paid, influential programmer DJ I aspired to be. After a few years out, I'm back in it now, albeit part-time and low on the totem pole. I don't expect anything to come of it, but old habits die hard. Lately I've been trying to make the jump to public radio, but it's very hard to get hired there without any public radio experience. It's a chicken egg no win scenario. On one hand, it pains me to read all these people not reach their dreams but have such an amazing life, and realize I haven't done crap with mine while living a super sheltered life working 40 hours a week in a cube. Not being social enough starting from high school has made me into a socially awkward mess. No motivation or drive whatsoever to put myself out there from general fare and exercise. What's that? On the other hand, I want to just snap out of it and realize that I am still young enough at 24 to start doing something about it. I gotta get out there and meet new people. Try and make mistakes as well as successes. Find something to do. Make friends for once. The part that sucks is that it's probably all in my head too, and I know it. I was a nurse in Cali. I decided to give up my American dream after living in the US for more than a decade and moved back to the Philippines to marry my longtime long-distance girlfriend and manage the family business. So far business isn't doing well and kinda struggling financially, but I know that I cannot and will never give up. Do I regret it? Definitely not, as we now have twin boys that are extremely smart, healthy and very active. Too active, but I cannot complain. You are pretty much the definition of succeeding at life. Always wanted to be a cop since I was a kid. Joined the military, got out, got married, worked hard as security, got a job as a correctional officer, worked harder, then my wife left me. That destroyed me mentally. Finally got my job as a cop. but I wasn't the same. It was the best job I ever had, but I felt like I was awful at it. I didn't feel like I belonged, so I quit. Turns out I don't belong anywhere. Law enforcement may not have been a good fit, but the character traits and discipline you have could easily be applied to any other life skill. Keep moving forward, friend. In the running to become a sprinter, setting records, was about to get into my first proper intercontinental event. Got hit with an anaphylactic shock. Turns out I suddenly got cholinergic urticaria. Can't even do 2 minutes of jogging without breaking into a disgustingly unbearable itch across million small hives all over my body. No regrets. Would never have known how far I could push myself. My dream was to become an astronaut. I pursued it and didn't make it. I 100% do not regret it because, shoot for the moon, even if you miss you land among the stars. I wanted to be an author. I dropped out of school, got a crappy job to live on and spent a lot of my free time writing. Unfortunately, I'm an alcoholic drug addict. I slowly drank myself into poverty and poor health. Got caught up in crime, was arrested, went to rehab, and ever since I've been sober I just cannot write anymore. Things flowed so perfect when I had some scotch and a handful of Valium. Now it's just lifeless and terrible. It sucks because I'm only in my mid-20s, so my dream is practically laughing at me. I want to write, but without drugs and alcohol my creativity is non-existent. Not so long ago I would have argued my dream was worth dying for. Now I realize I'd like to live past my 30s and not end up overdosed or stuck in the cycle of shaking my way to the liquor store at 9 AM every morning just to feel normal. I'm studying an IT degree now, and although I don't really enjoy it, it's the responsible thing to do. I spent a good 10 years trying to get into professional theater. I studied and workshopped and rehearsed. I was able to be the lead in most of my productions in college, but outside of that has been nothing but disappointment. I'm not this or I'm not that. I need more training in this. I never look the part. It was after my son was born that I realized I needed to buckle down and actually have a job so I could provide for him. I work at a very popular theme park in the entertainment department training others, and it's been a joy. I didn't get on Broadway, but I do get to be on stage every day. And I get to raise a beautiful kid. Do I regret it? Not one single second. That sounds like a cool gig. I'd say you succeeded in your field. Frick Broadway. I really wanted to be a professional artist. Started going to school for it and found that my passion had grown. Made a name for myself doing art in the local scene, and even sold a few pieces. I was at the point where I was doing work for Audi and working under some huge named artists who are known internationally and have been featured in major publications. Then I had Mrs. Black. Mrs. Black was a fine arts professor who nobody liked, but was a very successful artist in her own right. She was very strict, by the book, and was known for making students cry drop out. I think she saw a lot of potential in me, and we had a bit of an interesting relationship. I was the punk kid who was a bit of an antagonist to her class, but she had some degree of respect for me as a student. She also liked me because I spent a lot of time helping her with various software and computer related things. I loved her classes, and took everything she offered. She was the best professor at the school, but also the most difficult. I brought in my portfolio I was trying to bring to a huge show one day after class. I sat her down and asked her to give me her most honest critique she could of my work. She praised my drafting ability, my skills in assembling installations, my knowledge of design, and then she just looked at me and asked what I wanted to do with my career. I told her that I wanted to be able to afford larger pieces, to travel to bigger shows, and I wanted to secure a position like her teaching art as a professor. She deadpan told me that I wouldn't be happy. She told me her salary, her financial woes, how much she had made off of her art. She told me that while my technical art design skills were vast, my work lacked originality and soul. I essentially told her to frick off and walked out. Submitted the work to the art show and it was denied. I had a major breakdown, and her words caused me to rethink my whole direction in my life. I shifted gears and pursued my passion for IT and software development, and I am now a professional dev that gets to paint in his spare time. But Mrs. Black and I regularly talk and get coffee. I thanked her for being real with me. Mrs. Black is awesome for doing what she did. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.